Big Mac, McDLT, a quarter pounder with some cheese fillet, a fish, a hamburger, a cheeseburger, a Happy Meal, McNuggets, tasty golden french fries, regular or larger size, a salad, chef or garden, or a chicken salad, oriental, big breakfast, egg McMuffin, hot.
Pour yourself a glass of McWine and settle in for McDonaldland, the story beyond the arches. Up next on PopCon.
Get away from her, you bitch.
Thanks for joining us at PopCon. A salute to all pop culture, but mostly the 80s. I'm your host, Victor, and you know what? You deserve a break today. So sit back and relax. If you're new to PopCon, understand this is not your typical YouTube channel of videos. It's a show about everything and nothing in particular. So please wait till the end. I guarantee a great time. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please help me out by subscribing now. But by the time you get to the end, you're going to love it and you're going to want to subscribe then. McDonald's conveys varying opinions on nutrition, but McDonaldland should at least conjure up some more friendlier memories, even if a bit hazy. McDonaldland built an empire and lives in the memories of millions of people who grew up on the TV commercials, birthday parties, and Happy Meals themed to the latest release. Well, we even have a McGuest today, so stay tuned. Oh, but it sounds like it's time to jump aboard the McDonaldland train for a joyous trip into the fast food pop connection.
Did somebody say McDonald's? Yes, since 1955. In early success of fast food and burgers and fries on the run, Speedy was the first mascot. His burger-headed design would not be that far from some of the future denizens of McDonaldland. Ronald, the jester with the same surname, would debut in 1963 as some sort of piecemeal patchquilt mascot wearing a tray on his head. A cup for a nose, this John Wayne Gacy-inspired atrocity would need to develop alongside some additional fiction to create a world that could be promoting the food, folks, and fun the generation was clamoring for. From 1971 until the mid-2000s, McDonaldland and its characters lived among us, but the synergy exploded during that perfect marketing era. That's right, the 80s, just like so many other familiar franchises. Here, the indelible roster of characters flourished and kept us coming back for more. More saturated fat, that is. To be clear, McDonaldland is not the restaurant itself, but something else. Let me explain. Some of you remember it at varying degrees of understanding. Some may simply remember playgrounds appointed with pirate faces, burger-headed cops, and perhaps even a professor to play around, while others may keenly remember those faces as family, as well as brand-identifying mascots who supported the products in the form of accompanying restaurant artwork and collateral, if not from live-action multimedia, tempting our fry fix. After Ronald, the real ruler of the realm, there was Grimace. Grimace is proof that rehabilitation can work, as he had suffered a serious addiction to the shakes. Milkshakes, that is. The big old slob would steal them with the help from his extra arms. By 1974, evil Grimace turned over a new leaf and lost 2 appendages in the process. He may still get the shakes, but probably just from withdrawals now. But this simpleton has been Ronald's loyal sidekick ever since. Now, Mayor McCheese presides over his constituents with a firm hand. His motto, speak softly, but carry a quarter pounder with cheese. Seems, however, he was corrupt, and after a lawsuit with Sid and Marty Krofft over the use of the H.R. Pufnstuf likeness, the mayor quietly disappeared in the mid-80s. Hamburglar, the little scamp, began life as an ugly rat-like creature who constantly spent time in the constable's jail for stealing the burgers from the hamburger patch. Now that's where McDonald's hamburgers grew like fruit on a plant. Even though hamburgers in McDonaldland were anthropomorphized, you know what I mean, and spoke, they were picked by the characters such as Ronald himself, and they ate them. I guess that was the McDonald's circle of life. He did get a makeover, and his gibberish even evolved into a more Groot-type language where robble robble, the only words he could mumble, could mean anything or everything. But it was only his fellow villain who could decipher it. Captain Crook. This crazy-eyed Captain Hook knockoff so fancied Phil A.O. Fish's lightly battered deliciousness that he also was most wanted by McDonaldland's chief inspector, Officer Big Mac. Similar in design to Mayor McCheese, Big Mac tried to keep the peace in McDonaldland, even with his Keystone Cop antics. Unfortunately, alongside the mayor and even the captain, Big Mac and our next citizen didn't make it much after the 80s revamp and faded into obscurity. The professor, no, not that professor. First, a creepy mad doctor in the background, the professor transformed into a more scattered inventor who helped Ronald with new inventions to make life easier in the already freewheeling McDonaldland. Then there's the Fry guys, now the Fry kids. They look a lot like cheerleader pom-poms and once again were first introduced as food thieves, going after those golden fries. You know, perhaps there was a larger hunger problem in McDonaldland that the upper class simply ignored. While introduced as goblins, these characters were very popular and were joined by other groups of characters like the McNugget Buddies, who livened up the streets of town as little performers, as well as the Happy Meal gang, who popped up in 1979 and led the marketing of the McDonaldland characters into promoting the new Happy Meal and whichever theme it was currently representing. Now, this is a rough bunch. If you're not careful, they're likely to pound you, like 10, 15, or 20 pounds. When the land finally lifted the no girls allowed rule, Bertie the Early Bird arrived in 1980. Bertie represents breakfast at McDonald's. It was a growing menu, and with her aviation-themed costume and even bumbling flying, she was always in for dropping in for an Egg McMuffin. Those burritos, though, they do something to her engine. There were also apple pie trees. This nightmarish visual was where we got our hot apple pies. But where was the other and far superior dessert? I suppose Ronald got his cherry pie elsewhere, since they weren't growing on trees.
PopCon is sponsored by Collection 82. Collection 82 is graphic designs of popular culture through the decades, favorite franchises, obscure characters, mashups per se, art like this, and sometimes the designs are even for the show that's going on right now. Find the links in the channel description as well as the video description and hop over there and support Collection 82. You'll be glad you did.
All of these characters, and a number of others who popped up once or twice, found themselves in mass market TV campaigns. They were very popular and had a great revamp in the mid-80s. Although some of the characters would see that was their demise or fade into the background, other characters shined and even short-lived characters emerged. Even the inventor went from rarely heard third-tier character to an integral part of the story. Grimace introduced Uncle Grimacy, who would arrive annually with Shamrock Shake in tow. McDonaldland always lived right outside the doors of the restaurant. Fantasy or not, Ronald could interact with the real world when at McDonald's, the center of McDonaldland and his home. Do you suppose it was like a portal from the milkshake volcanoes and bridges over Filet-O-Fish Lake that were just a train ride away into our drab little world? Well, McDonaldland and Ronald's friends were showing no signs of stopping. Not yet, anyway. Although the characters were heavily featured in commercials and decor, young people got more engaged with them if they were those lucky ones who celebrated a birthday with all of their friends at McDonald's. This was like a rite of passage for some. Now, alas, I never had a birthday party at McDonald's, but here to tell us a little more about those parties is a former McDonald's star lady, Jocelyn Wilson.
Thanks for joining me, Jocelyn. I appreciate you coming to PopCon.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, this whole story has been about McDonaldland. And so you held a role at McDonald's at one point. Tell me what that role was titled. What was your title?
Well, it was STAR for short. We were the stars at McDonald, and that was the store activities representative.
Awesome. When you told me that before and you just said it was like the star representative or the star lady or the star person, I didn't know it was an acronym. So that's great. That's good. So what years did you do this role?
Approximately 88 to 90.
Okay, 88 to 90. So perfect in my favorite decade, the 80s, everybody. So 88 to 90. And where was this? What region were you? Where did you work?
I worked at a couple different stores in southeastern Washington State in what we call the Tri-Cities.
Was that normal to be regional? Would you like hop back and forth? There wasn't one star person for one store?
There was pretty much just one star per store, but occasionally someone would need some help. So I was mostly at one store.
What was it like being the star person?
It was actually very fun. I had a lot of different roles. Birthday parties were a big deal. Obviously, I was just a hostess. If I was there in the morning, I poured people's coffees. The retired folks like to hang out. And then we were also in charge of decorating the store for the holidays and like assembling those McDonald's Land toy displays.
So what do you mean by toy display? I know when you walked into McDonald's, there was occasionally a display cabinet. Was that what you mean? Did you do something with those?
Yeah, we used to get them as a standalone display, like an
Okay.
end table with a dome, kind of. It's a standalone display. And those always made me laugh because I'm sad to say they were all came from China.
It happens.
And
Yes.
one day that I remember very specifically that I refer to all the time because it made me laugh so hard. So I pulled out the instructions and it told me to put the happy little screwdriver into screw A. And I was glad it was a happy little screwdriver.
It was important that it was
It
a
was
happy,
very important
very
that it was
important, at least to them.
for a happy meal. I mean,
So you'd put these displays together. Were they like the newest thing that the Happy Meal was doing, or just something that the store was promoting, or maybe was it just decor?
no, every time a new set of toys came out, we had a new display.
So you would put that display out. I love that.
Yeah.
The happy little screwdriver. And since it was a
Yeah.
Happy Meal, that totally makes sense. All right. So you said that you actually walked around, and so if you didn't have a party to go on to, were you just a hostess to the store itself?
Yep. Yep. I had a lot of elderly people that liked to chat with me in the mornings and I'd carry the coffee pot around and chat.
Well,
Do
that's
that.
nice. Do you how did you get that job?
I just applied.
Yeah, so it was a position. I'm not even sure if
Oh,
they
I'm
have that
sorry.
position anymore. Okay.
I don't believe they do. At the time, if I understand correctly, the family that owned the local McDonald's decided to try this position out and they advertised specifically for it.
Okay, wonderful. I understand now. I knew they all had birthday parties and somehow they had a host or hostess for them. But in your
Mhm.
case, it sounds like they specifically created a position and wanted to fill it with someone full time or part, well, at least someone's status to that position. But if there wasn't a party, I love that you were the hostess to the store. Something again that makes, if people look back, I mean, fast food is just that, it's fast. But at the same
Mhm.
time, a role like yours was somebody that made people feel comfortable being there, take your time, slow down a little bit. So that must have been very pleasant. And a lot of people must have got to know you.
I did actually enjoy that very much. And yes, there was always the regulars, especially our morning coffee drinkers.
I remember growing up, my mother and father had reusable McDonald's coffee cups. So I remember in our house even that there were coffee cups, a white porcelain of some sort, of sun on it, but it was very common to have. I think that was very normal for people.
Oh, yeah. They had, it seems to me that they had some glasses and stuff too at some point.
Glassware seemed to be prevalent at like every fast food place.
Oh,
So like a
that's
Happy Meal, like every fast food, like come get your
true.
39-cent glassware from the newest movie, or regarding our characters at McDonaldland. So McDonaldland itself, did any of the McDonald's you have a McDonaldland that showcased actually the characters of McDonaldland? Nowadays you find places with ball pits, but back then they were a little different. They had a lot of those main characters, Mayor McCheese and the Grimace. So did you guys have playlands?
We didn't.
No, there weren't any at
I
the
think
time.
our playlands came in not long after
After that.
that. Yeah. Although it's funny, for some reason, Patience, my daughter, sent me a picture of a grimace that's still somewhere in the back of a McDonald's. It was like a climbing thing, but it had
Okay.
his head on.
Top. And it looks like a jail.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one.
Kids love to play in jails.
Oddly enough.
Oddly enough, they do. So during any event, whether it was a birthday party or an event at the restaurant, did you ever interact with people that might have been in character?
I didn't
Oh,
know.
so you didn't have any characters come to the location?
No,
That's
I
interesting.
probably missed out somehow.
That's all right. It
I
happens. It
went
is.
to the newer one or something.
It could have been. Maybe it was just your location. But either way, hearing about again how so McDonald's, I think, especially in that era, was a comfort. And I think having some position like you called it, the Star Lady. Can you remind me again what that acronym meant?
store activities representative.
Nice, simple as that. But I think it's great that it had a hostess, made people feel very much at home, which I think is what McDonald's did a lot of in the time period. And I think their world of McDonaldland, their commercials, their characters, that certainly was important to their brand. When you did a birthday party, what was that like? Was it lots and lots of kids? Was it kind of crazy to try and keep track of? Would you do the ordering?
Yes, typically I'd talk to the mom and turn in the order.
Would you have to prepare a goodie bag or some sort of like prize or gift bag for the kids?
I did prepare a little goodie bag like you see at any kid's party, and it had, of course, little McDonald's tchotchkes, all
I
full
remember little hand puppet plastic.
of and
I do
sure,
remember those.
pencils, all the
Yeah.
standard fare. And then what we would do is we would play some games. There was games I can't think of off the top of my head right now that you could kind of play while being enclosed in a restaurant.
Right, exactly.
That I'd play with the kids at the games, and then we would bring out hamburgers or whatever they ordered, and then we'd bring out cake and we'd sing. It was very birthday party.
Wonderful. So, would you ever do a birthday party for a kid so young that it was just like pointless?
Oh, sure, 1-year-olds love McDonald's birthday parties.
And they love those games. I bet they work really well with a 1-year-old.
Yes, the games, that's great. All you do with a 1-year-old is stick fries and a piece of cake on on their table,
Well, whatever
their high
makes them
chair
happy.
table. That's right. Yeah,
Before,
no, that was really for the parents.
sure.
You're excited when your kid has that first anniversary. I was thinking about that the other day after we talked, and it made me laugh because we have a really large Seventh-day Adventist community in this area, and they don't celebrate things like
Yeah, that's
birthdays,
true.
but they always brought their kids in. Sometimes they would say, now don't bring out a cake, but they'd have a birthday party, but they really wouldn't call it that. But they wanted their kids to have friends and something going on. So, yes, I had quite a few of those non-birthday parties.
That is funny. It's almost like no matter if they didn't celebrate birthdays per se, they still wanted a piece of that, a
That's
piece of that
right.
action. So, what did you decide to leave, or did that position stick around? Did someone replace you?
In 1990, I was trying to do both it and part-time at Sigma,
Oh,
uh,
and
the company that I ended up working for.
wonderful. Okay, I understand. Yeah, makes sense. So
And
ultimately, then that changed.
right, and it became a one or the other situation. Well, obviously, I'm not going to. I mean, I enjoyed the job, but I'm not going to stay forever at a McDonald's. And from everything I heard, that particular position kind of faded out after that.
So, like you said earlier, though, it sounded like that owner made that position because they wanted to develop it into something more than someone who just hosted their parties. So you did much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I decked 1 year, I painted all the windows of the McDonald's for Christmas, and I used all the characters, and I had like Ronald driving Santa's sleigh, and I had the little.
That is awesome. I wish you had some photos of that. That
I
would have
know
been
I would.
great.
I don't know why I wouldn't have taken a picture
I'm
because
sure you did.
it actually looked like what it was supposed to. I did a fine job.
Did it?
But and the little what are they, French fry guys?
Yeah, the
That
fry guys, the fry goblins.
I think they were helping pull the sleigh, and there was Grimace over. I mean, yeah, I did this whole. It was a story panel. Basically, what it came out to was a story panel where somehow Ronald saved the day or saved Chris. I don't
Save
know.
Christmas. But that's wonderful that you were given that creativity as well, which I think that is awesome to say for those owners of the McDonald's to actually do that. What was training like? Was it just simply in the store? And did they have anyone to train you since you kind of were the first job, weren't you? The first one with that job?
Yeah, it was a lot of OJT. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a director of the group of us that was kind of an officer in the local McDonald's franchise company, um, that let us know how she'd like things done. I mean,
Okay.
I really liked her, but she was very much a stickler. We had uniforms.
Hmm.
Um,
Did it look
we
like this?
Okay, was this you?
okay. No.
No, that wasn't your
That
uniform.
looks like the 70s or something, doesn't it?
It does. It's the only picture I saw of a hostess for
That's so
McDonald's.
funny. She was very strict about we looked a certain way, and our slacks had the crease, and if we wore the skirt we had the stockings and the shoes,
I
whatever.
like that. She must have graduated from Hamburger University.
Probably she may well have.
Well, that's wonderful. So I love that. I love that you shared and that training was serious, because I do believe it is a business, it's a corporation. And so thank you for your time. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit of insight and being part of that, especially during the time of the 80s. And well, we're gonna go on with the show. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Bye now.
Yeah, we're the Happy Meal gang. Oh, you better subscribe to Popcorn. If you know what's good for you. You'll be sorry for it if you don't. Subscribe so the creator makes more content. Do it or else. Now, back to the show. My thanks to Jocelyn for the delightful retrospective on that once-in-a-lifetime honored tradition. The fictional universe was concocted to target kids and sell the products by introducing menu items with cute mascots. It worked for me. As we all know, a good marketing strategy can be more successful with the introduction of accompanying merchandise. Besides some little things at the restaurants like refillable coffee mugs and these little dandies, there were the various glassware offers, and who can forget the infamous orange drink? Never too specific what that was, but this jug was at every sporting event. But the merchandise I'm referring to came from the Play School line of Familiar Places playsets that included McDonald's in 1974. I especially loved the picture of Ronald in the dining room and the trays that could fit in a slot on each of the customer figures. I had this and loved it, but I also had the KFC one, but that's a totally different story. But it was Remco's 1976 McDonaldland playset, complete with steam train and playground, that was the most desired. And we had one of those as well. Sitting in front of the bay window in my house, I remember playing with Ronald and some of the other characters in full posability and dyed fabric detail. They even included a switch on their back to move their heads in various directions. The only thing outside of our McDonald's door was a playland. This was the closest you or I were going to get to visiting McDonaldland. Long before ball pits, McDonaldland playlands included all kinds of themed playground equipment or attractions, from Big Mac and Grimace jails to Mayor McCheese merry-go-rounds and even Captain Crook slides. Sitting atop a Filet-O-Fish or a cheeseburger chair, McDonaldland might have been the outdoor patio, but it was a fantasy world for any kid. If you were lucky, you could continue your adventure at home with that unique Remco playset, waiting seemingly to say, "We'd love to see you smile." If we weren't already, Saturday mornings kept us involved with the characters and new surprises awaiting at McDonald's. Endless barrage of TV spots with new characters, new fun, and new food was the norm. You never seemed to see the same one twice. But alas, like many commercials and cartoons that targeted kids during that era, the 80s, along with the push to be more health conscious, the characters of McDonaldland's days were numbered, and not even Bertie and Ronald working up an appetite through jazzercise could justify making it a good time for the great taste of McDonald's. Most of them had survived into the 80s and some even extending into the 90s. In the 2000s, the advertising conflicts between marketing strategies would eventually doom McDonaldland and for the most part, retire the characters. For a while, Ronald tried making it on his own. He was already doing birthday parties and opening new locations, so how much lower can you go? Along the way, he tried some new looks, lived full-time in the real world with real kids, and even tried changing his image into an active, physical, conscious kind of clown. Ronald always had the highly respectable Ronald McDonald House Charities to be part of, but the time of hawking hotcakes while targeting kids to convince parents for a McNugget Happy Meal was coming to an end. The last McDonaldland commercial was in 2009, and after some national clown scares infiltrated online, the writing was on the wall for Ronald. Although the images of characters creep up in some vintage decor, the playlands are all play places now, with on occasion some may rear their heads at the current birthday parties, but with no pomp and circumstance, Ronald McDonald was even finally sidelined in 2016 for the long and tooth campaign, "I'm Lovin' It." But are we really? Heartfelt Christmas adverts and gift certificates to the dog walker, all accompanied by Hamburglar or the antics of Grimace or Bertie, are nowhere to be seen. are we actually better for it? I remember with a smile those inventive and imaginative playsets and fanciful commercials as much as begging my mom for 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. But how much harm did Ronald and his friends truly have? I know this. I'm far better off for them.
So if you were paying attention, you may have heard some very familiar phrases throughout the show today. They were a number of slogans from the fast food giant over the years. Did you hear them? Did you catch them all? If so, let me know in the comments how many you caught and which ones. Did you know Jay Leno worked at McDonald's? He must have graduated from Hamburger University, which originated in Chicago and is now in 6 other countries around the world. Did you know that McDonald's is the largest toy distributor in the world? Those little Happy Meals are little itty bitty toy stores. Could we see more from McDonaldland? Sure. But seeing that sexy Hamburglar didn't test too well, probably not for a long, long time. And I'm not sure why. By the look of him, I'm sure he could have gobbled up a couple of patties, if you know what I mean. I want to shout out to Allison, a subscriber from California, who inspired me to do this episode. Now, all of this has made me kind of hungry for a McDLT. Do you remember that one? Until next time.